What's going on, Tamers? East here, and today I want to talk a little bit about the Mother D Reaper archetype, which was introduced in EX2's Digital Hazard, and why it's probably one of the most toxic deck types or archetypes that's ever been implemented in the game, and honestly why it might not be such a bad thing. Anyway, we'll talk a little bit about how the archetype works, why it's whack, why it's not so bad, and after that you guys can come to your own conclusions. Anyway, let's get into it. So this isn't a deck profile, but I need to talk about the cards in the deck to give you a better understanding of what they do and why they're kind of problematic. Alright, offender number 1, Mother D Reaper, aka Big Mama. She's a 15,000 DP with no level. She can't attack and she's not affected by opponent's effects. Additionally, once per turn, she can slurp up a searcher from either your board or from your hand. Additionally, once per turn, she can reduce the cost of one D Reaper Digimon that you play by the amount of sources that she has up under her. So for example, if you have a 5 cost Digimon that's D Reaper type, and you have 5 sources up under Mother D Reaper, that essentially becomes a free card to play. Next up, you have the Searcher card, aka Slurp. You can have up to 50 copies of this card in your deck. This card doesn't really do much. It can't attack, but whenever there's not another Searcher on your side of the board, you can reduce its play cost by 2, making it 1 to play. Additionally, whenever it's played, you can draw 1 card. And whenever this card is in another card's sources, all of your other D Reaper monsters get plus 1000 DP in Inheritance. Gatekeeper, aka no removal, no win. Security effect, recover 1, didn't play this card on the field. If your Mother D Reaper has at least 6 sources underneath it, all your opponent's Digimon on their turn gain security attack -1. D Reaper, aka Big Papa. If Mother D Reaper has 7 sources up under her, you can throw him in the trash and play him for 0 cost. He can attack as soon as he hits the board, and every time he attacks by putting 2 searchers from your trash up under him, he unrests, which means he can keep attacking for as many searchers as you have in the graveyard divided by 2. The idea of the deck is to put as many searches up under Mother D Reaper as quickly as possible. Because her effect only allows you to do that once per turn, it's going to take at least 7 turns. Once you have 7 searches up under Mother D Reaper, you can play your Reaper, and you should be able to just clear out your opponent's security, full stop. If you're having trouble finding all of your searchers, which is pretty unlikely because usually half the deck is at least searchers, then you can play your Gatekeeper in order to stop your opponent from making swings to your security. This security attack -1 ability is actually pretty powerful, and because of the way Mother D Reaper is created, it's actually really hard to target out the Gatekeeper itself. So I said before that Mother D Reaper can put 1 search up under her effect per turn, which means you have 7 turns to win. However, she has a couple cards in the deck that allows her to turbo out this effect and put cards up under her more than once per turn. And again, she has a ton of support for the archetype, however, only 3 of these cards are really that useful. The first is going to be Jury, second is going to be Pendulum Fleet, and the third is going to be Bubbles. I'm not going to talk about their effects because they basically just all do very similar things, and that is put another searcher up under Mother D Reaper, or grab another searcher from the deck. So I gave you a quick synopsis of the key players in the deck so you have a better understanding of what it does and how it's able to win within 5 to 6 turns pretty consistently. It's possible to get turn 4 high rolled, but I mean that's pretty unlikely, considering you have to give your opponent memory, and they would need to find the right cards in the right order. So the deck is actually pretty easy to pilot. Most turns are very similar. Play a searcher, suck it up, play another searcher, do something else. Outside of that, it's kind of tough to take out some of the cards in this deck because they have no levels, and a lot of the removal right now in the game is level based. So if you don't have a way to target a single Digimon, for example, using something like Gaia Force, then it's kind of tough to take out, for example, the Gatekeeper, who can stop you from making security attacks outright and winning the game. If you're a casual player, you're probably going to hate this deck, full stop. But that's not really that bad. This deck is what I call a meta-defining deck because you have to build stuff to be ready for it specifically because it's so easy to play. The cards aren't hard to get, and you know the learning curve is near flat. And once it goes off, it pretty much just wins the game. What that does though, and this is my opinion as a good thing, is that it draws a line in the sand as a minimum requirement that decks need to meet in order to be competitive. It forces players to build decks with a specific focus, and if you know that your deck has targeted removal, is fast, or can slow down other decks, then having 2 of those 3 things means that you can probably contend with other decks, which I think makes deck building overall better for everybody. If you can take care of this, then you can typically take care of other things in the meta, and you kind of have an idea of what you need to be building around or be preparing for when you have a deck like this. So now that I've talked about why I think Mother D Reaper is a very obnoxious archetype, and despite that it's not all bad in my personal opinion, I want to talk about what I think is the truly whack stuff for Mother D Reaper, and that is Mother D Reaper can be played outside of its archetype. Let me talk a little bit about why and how that is. So Mother D Reaper is a Digimon with 15,000 DP and no level, which means in a lot of cases it's usually the highest DP Digimon on the board. Any removal, for example, Schwarz's Hearts that is level targeted, or send back to your hand removal based on level doesn't work on it. Gallantmon Crimson's mode effect, which allows him to delete the highest DP Digimon on the board, typically targets Mother D Reaper and it does nothing, which seems a little lackluster considering you're paying a ton of memory to get to the level 7. So this is what's really annoying. So Mother D Reaper can act as almost like a black hole for removal effects while keeping the other Digimon on the board around. Additionally, Gatekeeper's effect while the Mother D Reaper is on the board and is checked in security just triggers, and that's really annoying. So it basically allows any deck to have an extra security if you have a Mother D Reaper on the board. It basically gives any deck free security, and because it's wide, it can typically be running pretty much anything. Although security control could be problematic. These two things make security control as an archetype even more obnoxious. While I will say that the meta, as of recent, has been actually pretty fast and security control has not been able to keep up, this does give them quite a bit of defense as far as stopping some of the effects that have plagued them in the past couple of sets. And while Digital Hazard set is still relatively new, this is already starting to become a trend with a lot of the security control decks, and is actually doing quite well in some of the more recent local tournaments happening here in Japan. And so it's my fear that this becomes the meta. And so my hope is that at some point we either A, get an errata on Gatekeeper, which I think is probably the most problematic card, or they just ban the thing outright. Because having free security in a security control deck and having a Mother Reaper on the board to absorb removal effects is, like I said before, a little obnoxious. Anyway, folks, that's gonna be it for me. I think there's some really good things that the deck does, and as far as helping people build decks and knowing what to kind of get over in the meta, having a central deck within the meta to kind of build around is a good thing in my opinion. And again, the fact that security control can take advantage of this is, I think, kind of problematic, and hopefully it doesn't become too much of a problem and spiral out of control into the future. Anyway, folks, do me a favor, hit the subscribe button before you get out of here, and I'm gonna catch you in the next one. You guys be good.